Welcome to Talking Tools. This is a podcast dedicated towards exploring all aspects of building well. Whether you're a designer, architect in certifications and approval, or constructions, or perhaps you're on the other side of the ledger as an investor, insurer, developer, or indeed someone who relies upon good buildings as a safe place where you want to work and live, good quality buildings are beneficial for all. So we'll be exploring that in today's episode. My name is Siva Gounder. I'm your host. And I'm joined by a man who spent much of his 50-plus year career trying to liberate knowledge and improve building quality, Jerry Tyrrell.
Hi, Siva.
G'day, Jerry.
Hello, everybody.
How are you feeling about the podcast? You said you've done a couple of camera pieces before?
I've got a great face for radio. But look, I'm here. I've got a message. I've got a solution, I believe, that we can all participate in. But you'll hear this story over the next few episodes.
I want to really unpack a little bit more about what trouble-free building means. Do you think trouble-free building exists? Is it something that's attainable?
Oh, absolutely. It's just so possible. This is what I'm just despairing about, that I'm just thinking, why can't we deliver buildings the way in the medieval times and ancient times there were just trouble-free, beautiful buildings that still stand. And yet I've spent the last 5 decades going through and seeing endless problems that nobody ever wanted.
So I want to unpack that a little bit. I want to also talk about one of the leading causes of internal wet area defects. A little piece of metal which causes an awful lot of problems. So we'll deep dive into that a little bit. About you, Jerry. I know you don't like talking about yourself, but I think it's important that we share a little bit more around the why you've done some of the things you've done in your career. You've got an unusual mix of skills, architect, builder, tradesman, labourer.
Look, I always knew I'd be an architect, but I'd enrolled in the Faculty of Architecture, and before first year I started as a labourer, and then every holiday, every weekend I was working on site doing something with very good tradesmen, and often just painting and maintaining buildings.
Do you think that having that trade-based background has given you a different perspective when you're thinking about the design of a building?
Oh, absolutely. It's just that whole, but it's not a contest. It's not an us versus them. It's a synergy of knowledge that we see in the beautiful buildings, where the great design comes through and everybody is so incredibly proud and passionate. And the term that I'll weave into our story here, I want solutions to be the top story, but craft to get there. And as you design something, when you detail it, when you build it, when you puzzle through something that's a bit awkward, it's all about the craft of building.
It's something that's almost unspoken about, is this arm wrestle that often happens between design and construction. Why do you think that, firstly, do you think that arm wrestle exists?
It does, and it shouldn't. The core objective for all of us, and that's the trades as well, is beauty, creating something that's wondrous and beautiful and functional.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got to draw and detail that, and then you've got to communicate it. But unless you get buy-in from the trades to pick up on the problems, the technical problems, building something that is, in fact, looks beautiful, and ideally the designers have also helped in the synergy to create the solution for how it's going to be built.
Having everyone rely upon a reliable source of truth and knowledge is probably something that'll probably unite all aspects of construction.
It's universal. The knowledge is there. It's just a wonderful resource for all of us, but we just don't find it as easily as we should. We started inspecting buildings for friends. The first one I did in 1975 in Paddington for a good mate of mine, and I realised that there was no discipline in the industry about how to inspect, to do a pre-purchase inspection. So we then...
How did you realise that? Just because there was nothing?
It was unregulated. There was no structure to the way the issues were being reported. It was very haphazard. So I did a research project looking at all the different types of inspections in the industry. And in the late 70s, early 80s, we started Tyrrell's Property Inspections, and I wrote a lot of information for the legal profession, for the standards associations, and tried to get some rigour and discipline in the industry.
So prior to you deep diving into that and trying to add some taxonomy and some structure, it was quite an unstructured process.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's fairly haphazard now, because I think there are a lot of things that people just have to accept when they buy, including a lot of the latent defects that we're trying to avoid with upskilling designers and contractors. But there are major issues. There's systemic damp, there's asbestos, there's just little silly things that people really need to know about that may cost them a new roof. If, say, for instance, it's a slate roof in an older terrace.
So through your early work there, and I guess jumping into the detail, recognizing that there isn't structure here.
After pre-purchase inspections, we realised that quality in Australian construction was difficult for everybody to understand. So we started to offer progress inspections and final inspections and defect reports to ideally trap issues, especially before clients and builders had paid. So we evolved this and started telling the story.
And no one's doing this at that time, right?
No one was really doing it seriously. There were haphazard progress inspections by councils and final inspections by councils, but there was no structure, there was no discipline, there was no... And taxonomy is the way we classify information. You see it in science, you see it in medicine, you see it in biology.
Yep.
Our industry, it don't have much in it, and if they do have it, it's incredibly unclear.
Yeah, excellent. And so, and I want to make that point that what the structure we have today, even though it's not perfect, is a result of that early work that Tyrrell's did.
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, Tyrrell's was industry leader. It still is a thought leader. For some reason, engineers are becoming more prominent, but certainly building consultants should be the first people that consumers and builders go to whenever there is a building-related problem. Well, you had all these names. You had building surveyor, you had building inspector, you had all sorts of different names that were confusing. And I just wanted consumers to know the one name. You had a building problem, you go to the institute, you go to the building consultancy industry to find that person who starts you off the right way.
So what is a building consultant? I mean, because that's quite a diverse, broad title.
Well, you can come from any industry, but ideally it is a builder-based. It's a person who's got a very open scientific mind, who should be trade qualified, who's able to apply the depth of craftsmanship and knowledge, add to it any research and codes that need to be considered, and give consumers really objective advice.
So you've now given us some reports, you've put together a body where consultants can coalesce around. And a lot of detective work. I believe Tyrrell's have done 150,000 plus inspections.
Millions and millions of defects that are avoidable. That your skill, your craft, your wisdom, your proactive behaviour will stop in future.
What did you see? I mean, you've obviously been on a heck of a lot of sites. Did you see a diverse range of issues, or did you see the same mistakes?
Pretty much the same, based on the same problem, lack of knowledge. Most of them are unintentional. There's some sloppy and fraudulent work, but that's the minority. And it was just so constant. And if you want, you've got a pillow, grab a drink, and I will take you through the millions of defects that
Tell
I've
us,
seen.
so share one with us. What's a common one that you came across?
Most of the expensive issues go to weatherproofing, waterproofing, damp proofing within the building itself, and it boils down, and this is what we'll talk about later. I have a risk approach to everything, so I don't worry about the little mark on a door jamb or a screw that's missing from a hinge, and there's plenty of those things. They're very simple to fix. What I want us to do is I want us all to focus on the high risk parts of our craft, so that at least the core, the fuel cell of every job we do is done correctly. So window flashings, it used to be a real trade, and there's no discipline, especially with external balcony thresholds. We will be talking about internal waterproofing at water stops and water bars. A lot of it has got to do with the simplicity of just good practice, hygiene, cleaning your surfaces before you apply coatings, reading the labels and understanding the science of the products we're using, and making sure that the product you're using on top of another product is compatible. It's pretty basic stuff.
I mean, you said you focus on risk, and that seems fairly intuitive and fairly obvious. Are we not doing that already?
Oh, we're not doing that.
I mean, we've got codes, we've got books. Surely they're all focused on risk.
Look at me. Look, I'm aghast. I could bring a hand truck in of paper that we've all got access to, but nobody is understanding. I'll be up in a roof, and there won't be a junction box on connectors with a fatal risk to a homeowner going up there to run a cable for their data.
Yeah.
You see things which just defy logic, which no age-old tradesman or craftsman would leave that way.
You've got a principle that you talk about sometimes called the Duomo principle.
And I can say, in the beginning, in the olden days. Well, it's not olden days, it's now. How can it be that people 2,500 years ago built much better buildings with no mechanical assistance at all, that are standing well now, that we look at and we say wow to, and you look at the blocks of units that are on the media the whole time that is just creating so much distress to people. And maybe that's what my segue to say to all of you, you don't deserve this. It's just impossible for a healthy society to have this loss and distress and failure all around them when they're doing something that is so joyful, which is building their own home or building an investment or sharing our tax going to a community building that's badly built, that people slip in, that the handrails can't be gripped, that they trip on the stair edges, that are slippery because water gets in because there's not a simple hood over an external door. It's just, they are all things that I did not see in so many of the beautiful historical buildings that I've seen around the world and in Australia.
And the Milan Duomo, I had the pleasure of going there earlier this year, and it is a true delight. You stand in front of this building and to say that the fact that this thing was built without the piles of paper, rules and regulations that we have today, and yet it's still standing strong 600-700 years later.
But I'm sure that a lot of those people, they weren't worried about the money. They were worried about the craftsmanship, the shape, the consistency. And look how it is absolutely revered now. And you bothered to take a side leg to see it.
It was stunning. What are the 2 or 3 key things that we need to build well?
Knowledge. In diagrams. That everybody can access the same pool of knowledge. Well, look at our technology now. I can get most answers on this. With Google, with if I need to go somewhere, if I need to call a taxi, if I need to order something, I'm predominantly using this. And yet we have to spend hours and hours and hours to find the simplest of answers. If you're a rookie, you're going to spend a lot of time, or you won't spend a lot of time, and you'll guess it, make a mistake, and that will be a terrible start to your career.
Absolutely.
Or it will be a speed bump. If you're a professional and you make an unnecessary mistake, you've got a serious speed bump in your profit in that year.
I want to now cut across to the leading cause in internal wet areas, the Waterstop Angle.
Look, I use that as a rallying point because the Waterstop Angle at most doorways, it's just haphazardly pushed in, bit of sealant, squirted on, and they don't know why it's there. It is the ultimate barrier to water getting from your... Now, wet area is, of course, your shower, bathroom, ensuite, anything that's got essentially a lot of water in it. So you put a water bar between the main area and the external room. Of course, there are other waterproofing issues that are critical around the floor wastes and, of course, the quality of the waterproofing. And we can get into more detail about that. But taking the risk approach, that Waterstop Angle is really important. And you'll find that I focus on as many of those things in building as possible. And I want everybody to start to take those seriously, whether they're a student or whether they're the person inspecting the work when it's built.
All right, so we're going to dive into the Waterstop Angle, one of the headache-causing issues in internal wet areas. So Jerry, talk us through this, looking at the waterproofing section, internal waterproofing.
Sure.
There's different types of water stops that are available.
There are, and we'll probably just go to the normal swing door one. Oh, look, cavity sliding is great because it shows you, maybe that's a choice. Often they don't get this right. The water bar, or the Waterstop Angle, is often aluminium. Sometimes they use more expensive options. There are sizing issues. I won't go into too much detail here, but it's the barrier between the floor finish from the wet area or bathroom, laundry, and the room at the door. There's a lot going on here. The angle needs to be properly bedded. It needs to be, in my opinion, fixed down. This is a pocket door or cavity sliding door, so you'll see that.
Yep.
And I've shown that door overlaid above the angle. For me, I've always put any angle under a door in the middle of the door. Now you hear my condemnation. I think that everybody is equal, but I'm wondering why aren't we all?
That's all right, that's in the middle of the door there.
So that's in the middle of the door. And as long as the angle is always in or about the middle of the door, you'll never see the different floor finish when the door is closed.
What else are we getting wrong?
Oh, look, you're not sealing, so you'll see at this very corner joint, if you run the cursor up, that corner joint is just haphazardly sealed. And so it breaks, and that's the point, that's the weak point. Often under a cavity slider, that angle is not returned underneath the gap, underneath the sliding door.
Yep.
It's not correctly bonded. You'll see a lot of red there. So I use colour, and we use colour with tools to try to showcase different materials. So we want people to get used to the fact that when you put your sealants and beads and bond breakers, there's a science to it. In wet areas, it needs to be a certain radius. It needs to be on the edges of anything that's sharp, because your membrane is going to fail when it moves over the edge of something sharp. And we can press on this particular tool. You can go to install membrane. You'll see how it's installed. There are very specific heights and rules. It needs to be 25 mil above finished floor level. And obviously the top of membrane, we all know the 150 rule, which is above the structural level. You've got the 150 rule. Now, all of those measurements are, what's the word, put at risk at doorways, where you can't have the membrane any higher than the Waterstop Angle.
The last point is the finishes.
And you can show finishes, so every layer of this, I think this is a vital teaching aid to any apprentice, to anybody learning. And this is cross-trade. Every supervisor, every builder needs to know it, but the waterproofer needs to know it, the tiler needs to know it, the labourer needs to know it, because they've got to clean the substrates and make sure that they're right. I'll point out I use a 3mm rule, and I see this in all good work. People say, oh, why are you saying that? I always have the Waterstop Angle slightly higher than the tile inside the wet area.
That's this lip here.
That lip there. And I just use a 3mm. It's compliant with the access code. It's a great water check. If you have kids and they cannonball into the bath, or they leave the shower door open and the shower squirts out and the floor's a bit flat because it's a large tile, you never get water kicking over onto your expensive carpet or finish inside the hallway or bedroom. Please listen carefully to the waterproof membrane requirements for primers. There's a different metal primer to the concrete or fibre cement primer and PVC primer. So let's get serious about the science of what we're doing.
Okay, well that's good. I love that we've started this journey around trouble-free building. We talked about the Waterstop. We talked a little bit about some of the things that you've done in your career. What I want to explore in the next episode is deep dive a little bit more into defects and why they're occurring. And we spoke about knowledge being the balm, to soothe some of these issues. So talk about why that information is not getting through. So that's for next time. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you.